How many of your dogs must I kill before you learn?
As a tech-focused channel first and foremost, this does not preclude my love of games, which burns as bright at least as that. Armored Core is unlikely to get close to the praise and adulation that Elden Ring enjoyed last year, yet it deserves it. And for me, it's one of the best and most engrossing games I've played this year, and possibly for the last few. Why? No frills, no long drawn out cutscenes, no heavy tutorials filling the screen for the opening hours. It simply gets down to the business of being a game and never lets up. Mission structured, skill based, tactical, clandestine action with mechs. I mean, what's not to love? One of the main reasons it tickles my fancy so much is my age and passion for the old school shoot 'em ups that dominated arcades, my free time, and then home computers during the 80s before fading away into the early 90s. The original Armored Core on PlayStation 1 was also attempting this shoot 'em up rebirth, improved in Armored Core 6. Each mission is the next level. After the first, you can choose from 2 most times, and you can earn new weapons, upgrades, tuning and skills as you go. It's like a mix of R-Type, Thunder Force, Forgotten World, Xenon 2, Ranger X and more in a modern casing. A variety of mission types, from action-filled levels with cannon fodder to get you pumped, hone your skills and then build your confidence, stealth, reconnaissance of data, extreme corporate sabotage and many more. Each can change from the brief, search a base, and then a mid-level boss pops up and puts you back in your box, to the end of chapter ones that make you rethink your life choices and certainly your loadout. It even uses huge monster mechs you have to stop, scale and destroy in a nod to level 3 of R-Type and a few others that use multi-screen bosses. But it always feels like a modern mech-inspired old school shooter, and the feel of the game and the story all work because they're carried with great voice acting only, and not soured with clunky character models and animation. Here, less is most certainly more.
Code 7-8, requesting backup.
I can't get through to HQ.
The cavalry isn't coming. Wipe them out, 621.
Guys, taking significant damage. We're not through yet.
Throw them off.
Sir, the eye's in a critical state.
Impossible.
How can just one AC do this?
Complete shutdown confirmed.
Enough, tourist. It's been miserable knowing you, but I guess playing nice is a smart choice here. You want to go up top, right? Let me show you the way.
And the story in character arc is well delivered during combat, with army chatter and one of the best generals I've heard in a game.
Can't take yourself away from chatting with a tag-along? Why don't you start a sewing club together and stitch that damn mouth of yours shut?
With some cracking lines during play that would make a pwn smile on his cigar.
All right, sweethearts, you heard the man and you know the drill. Assholes and elbows. Hudson, come here. Come here.
Now, the skill-based action and tactics drives the play style, but this is not Dark Souls or Elden Ring. Much simpler in all aspects, but more enjoyable and engaging for it, as you can leave a mission and try another if that one is challenging, or go back and earn an S rank on a previous mission to boost credits and get the next upgrade. You can drop in and drop out just like games of old that I love. The enemy types are varied and each can have strengths and weaknesses, and you have to learn and exploit them, but they can do the exact same thing to you, and the balance of generous checkpoints and loadout changes when you die helps reduce the frustration. Be sure to just grab that part before you ship out, as there are no shops in battle, so you can only swap with what you own, or a restart is needed. Again, intentional and brilliant, as it means you pay for your mistakes and you learn that much faster for them. All the combat, movement, lock-ons and control is exceptional, aside some gripes where the game can ignore your input and being staggered once can be the end of you instantly. But this is the only element that is similar to Dark Souls, in that a single mistake can end your game. 95% of the time it's fair and fine, but on occasion I did feel this can be overzealous on ignoring your repair click and sometimes dodge, but all's fair in love and war.
I just wanted to call a sign of my own.
From a graphical perspective, it uses the same Elden Ring Atala engine, and it's driven by incredibly muted yet imposing art design over any technical chops. That said, they do use many effects and features to amplify this. GPU particles are particularly worthy of merit, as they add so much to all of your firepower, explosions, weather effects in levels such as snowflakes, fire embers billow out, smoke plumes from destroyed debris with sparks and trails. Electric shots, explosions, and general contact make great use of this, and the impact it adds to the 2D billboard alpha effects convince, as a huge walker is consumed in smoke and sand. Lighting is key, with bright whites, burnt oranges, muted blues, blacks, all adding atmosphere to each level, and aligned with dense scenery and destruction, with trees, pylons, crates, water towers, and more all being destructible alongside the enemy, and you aids the sense of realistic physics as you leave a wake of destruction any 80s action movie would be proud of.
We're under attack. The corporate merge.
Intercept.
Confirmed. Transport chopper down. Keep at it, 62.
Mech flight also employs physics, with weight affecting your takeoff and aerial control. Again, balancing the power of upgrades with the speed, and it feels fair and accurate that you can quickly adapt to it and even use it in your favour. Textures and detail is minimal though, with some blurry elements even on PlayStation 5, Series X and PC, with the older generation really suffering at times on the visual front. You will rarely spend long enough looking at these to notice, aside the mech garage sections where the low mip-maps even on the Xbox One X stand out. But the reason is related to the circa 18GB smaller install size these versions have over the 53GB current gen and PC versions. All of this being texture and BVH related. It still relies on the screen space ambient occlusion and cascaded shadow maps, and these two areas are also dynamic, with them scaling up and down during action, which can be very obvious at times, as they almost oscillate back into a stable position when this happens. I did note the Xbox consoles tend to have lower shadows than PlayStation, as here with the PS4 actually having better shadows than the Xbox One X, which is odd. All versions look very close, aside the ray traced AO that used in the garage sections if enabled. A minor boost, but not one that makes a big difference at all, and it's largely due to the very limited and repetitive sections it's actually used in. Had they created multiple level start sections, it may have had a bigger impact, or used them in real-time cinematics, which would be the best place for them in practice. The FX cutback and resolutions are the only changes you will notice amongst a few others across generation to generation.
One of the infamous handler Walter's hounds. Interesting. You ready to climb the wall?
A cross-generation game again. We start at the bottom with the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One S. The gap on a visual front is pretty big. AO is cut back on Xbox One S, as is LOD slightly, and shadows are at the lowest, with AA being pretty much off. In addition to all this, the game uses DRS and can scale from a high of 1600 by 900 to an often found 1152 by 648 level, bringing it into Switch territory of output. This means between the two you do get significantly worse visual appearance, and image stability is very poor. But the choices are the right ones, as performance benefits from this, although it's not smooth. Up from here, all comes down to the resolution and refinement. PS4 scales from 1080p down to 900p in action, but AA is better. Next up, we have PS4 Pro, which uses what looks to be a checkerboard resolve to a fixed, from all my counts anyway, 1800p output, and looks very clean and benefits greatly from the boost in clarity, even if textures look no better due to the same assets contained within. Rounding out the last gen is the Xbox One X, which boasts the highest count of 3840 by 2160, which again uses DRS, but from my counts seems to stay at or close to 1512p level most of the time. The Pro is a little sharper than the Xbox One X zoomed in, but the textures are not, and shadows are worse on the One X, so in reality they trade blows on that score. Then we have the Series S, which is below them both, with its quality mode a fixed 1440p, and its performance mode drops this down to 1080p, but it does still target 1440p via DRS, but it's almost never at that level. However, textures are better and shadows are now as good as the Pro in quality mode. but the FX still scales lower in its performance mode. One area noted was because of the checkerboard solution on the PS4 Pro being post the alpha effects, things like the particle snow effect can be severely reduced on the Pro above any other version, which stands out here in comparisons. The current gen by and large are very close. The Series S is first, with some minor reductions on shadows, AO and AA, and LOD over the PS5 and Series X quality mode. As noted, frame rate mode engages DRS, and like the bigger consoles, no matter which mode you play on, the cutscenes run in quality mode and are fixed at the highest pixel counts of 1440p here. PlayStation 5 and Series X hit 4K from all my counts in quality mode and have the highest visual settings, in fact matching PC's maximum from all my baseline checks. And frame rate mode turns on DRS with 2160p the ceiling and 1512p the bottom end, both on PS5 and Series X. It's often around that 1512 to 1800p range on both, but Series X sometimes can be slightly lower than the PlayStation 5 in like-for-like counts, but again, this is DRS and it could scale higher and lower. In addition, the dynamic FX ramp up here with shadows and AO and even AA reducing when in motion, and it seems they can remain that way on the Series X, so I do suggest it is a bug in the API. But in general play, you will likely not see much if any of this, and even on the PlayStation 4 to Xbox One S during combat, this can fade away as all versions look very impressive in motion, as this is what games are designed to be.
First! Intercept! Keep them off the supplies!
Now it's here that we see the biggest deltas across platforms and generations. Last gen first and base consoles both target 30 FPS, and even though they do not run at that frame rate often, it reinforces why I focus on frame times, as both can have bad frame delivery causing judder and in heavier sections drop frames also. This means expect a game that can at times feel okay and in others can feel like it's dropping frames or skipping, as it often is during combat. That said, the averages show the engine uses all the dynamic elements and limited memory these consoles have to stay as close to 30 new frames every second. Just do not expect them to always be in line. PS4 is slightly better than the Xbox One, but outside of a frame analysis like this, they both feel close to expectations of a FromSoft title running on 10-plus-year-old hardware. Although none of the game's impactful action and engaging gameplay is lost, it is muted a little. Xbox One X and Pro both target 60 FPS, but this is never hitting my tests, with the low 40s being the best seen. That said, the choice is better as it means frame times stay closer to 33 and 16 milliseconds, which means both consoles do feel better than their weaker siblings. And although they never feel anything like 60 FPS, they at least play and perform closer to 30, which is a noticeable boost over the PS4 and Xbox One machines. These versions also present a further test of current gen machines we'll get into later. The visual increases are welcome as the game's fine details and faster frame times do help these two versions look very close, aside texture details and AO, to the current generation.
We'll handle this mission ourselves. One target destroyed.
Hey, freelancer, but no one even told you why we're here. Well, let's leave the red guns and climb the wall. This is just target practice.
Talking of that, Series S is next, and here we see almost the same performance levels to the One X and Pro in its quality mode. Although it runs at a lower resolution of 1440p, the textures AO and LOD are slightly better, with the increased MIPS being the most obvious. It also runs RTAO in this mode, but not in gameplay, and it's so limited, in this build at least, that it never makes that much of a difference. As you can see in the comparisons though, the frame rate mode benefits from a 44% reduction in pixel counts and shadow cascade and AO reductions, meaning it now reaches closer to that hallowed 60 FPS. Sadly, in action though, it still falls some way short of that goal. It is by far the best so far, but in some of the heavier missions it can drop to the 30 FPS range, and this can still not achieve a consistent level of performance. In side by side, we can see that almost 80% improvement at times across an average run of play. We see a 41% increase, showing that the pixel count does help greatly on the target, and it may be bandwidth bound still at 1080p, which can cause some of the closer FPS readout sections, but the performance boost is tangible without any FPS graph required.
How about that? Guess you're not a total amateur. Good for. Can't say I considered you a pro either. We don't need backseat drivers in the red guns. Shape up or ship out!
Quality mode on the big consoles is a match for the best on PC and runs at the same native 4K resolutions, which is worth noting. The PC version is one of the best day one ports From Software have ever delivered to date. DX12 based, no shader compilation stutter, and not even a pre-compiled pop-up when started was noted. It either creates them async during play or it does it in the background within the first boot and subsequent loading sections. A star here. The menu mirrors Elden Ring with a main, low, medium, high, max settings, and within these subsets you can then tweak a few of them, but the best bet here is to set to maximum and then scale resolution outputs to hit 60 FPS. Or target AO and shadows for GPU savings and LOD for CPU ones, but generally even a modest desktop CPU of the past 8 years or so should be good enough for 60 FPS. As I covered in my IGN review a few weeks or even months back now, the Steam Deck runs this great at 720p medium to low settings at a 30 or 40 FPS target, and I stand by that recommendation. Using my mid-range RTX 2070 with an overclock, it can be used as a proxy 3060, 4060 level of performance expectations. Then 4K Max is largely a 30 to 40 FPS output performance and can even dip below it at points, meaning I would recommend the DRS option. However, on PC, or at least my RTX card, DRS works for effects but not resolution, meaning you have to pick a lower base output, and no DLSS or FSR2 here leaves you with native options only. I found 1620p high settings delivers an almost locked 60 FPS readout compared to the match quality settings of Series X and PlayStation 5 in this mission. PC itself does very well here, being only 9.5% and 13% respectively slower than PlayStation 5 and Series X. A pretty close result indeed. The FPS mode cannot be compared as DRS works on consoles. However, FromSoft do not target high optimized titles on certain platforms, and the results here across console and PC still offer some of their best yet. Running at the fixed 1620p output, approximately 43% reduction on 4K still looks good, and now 60 FPS is reality, and with my old 2700X not impacting this target. That said, the game is still single or dual thread bound at times, and although 120 FPS is possible on this machine at 1080p high, the CPU can still cause it to dip into the low 60s in heavier battles, along with bandwidth demands that can affect all machines in heavy alpha. Now, CPU-wise, my aging 8-core 2700X is more than good enough to hit 60 FPS plus, and this is a game that will be GPU-bound on most machines, above the Steam Deck at least, and it runs across lower and high-end hardware such as the RX 480 or even GTX 970 with no real issues at 900 1080p-ish 60 FPS rates, reinforcing this is a cross-generation game through and through, and as much fun on PCs as consoles with great mouse and keyboard support. Fresh out of the package. Now, the big boys have two modes. With quality, the performance is pretty variable, and although it's better than Pro and Xbox One X at higher res and settings, and better than my RTX 2070 PC at the same settings, i.e. maximum, it never comes close to being a 60 FPS game, and would even struggle on VRR screens, as it can dip too often into the 40s and even high 30s. The boost to IQ is welcome in certain sections due to the fact that real-time cutscenes run in this mode. The choice I always prefer to boost fidelity, and this mode is for those that always want the sharpest and cleanest image at all times at the cost of performance. I'm thankful we now have seen such a long run and wide selection of games that offer dual modes on these consoles, and it still continues 3 years in. And From Software are now joining that group with not one but two titles. So I think a corner has been turned in this aspect, and with the best PC version they've ever delivered, I am grateful we have this mode, even if it offers nothing more than a perfect PC mode for a console yet to come. Maybe.
I'll distract it while you hit its blind spot.
Thankfully, the second of the mode does a much better job, and the sacrifices are largely invisible to most, as covered in the Resin FX section. Now we see 60 FPS hit often on both machines, and the opening level could see some dips into the low 50s, which remained within that VRR window, but still felt good without one. As I covered in my IGN review, but have since tested more demanding levels across that use long draw distance, high geometric load, heavy use of GPU particles, characters and alpha effects, and here we can see both machines are stressed more, as you have already seen with the prior consoles and PC, and here we now see the opening mission. The PlayStation 5 gains a small advantage over the Series X. Sometimes it can be 5 to 8% faster on PS5, and on other missions the advantage flips to Series X with similar levels. Unlike quality mode though, which aside cutscenes fall within margin of error, in framerate mode I'm not convinced that some of it is not CPU related issues at points, but certainly others are bandwidth and pure compute and GPU related. The base engine is still designed for last generation machines and PC, so the port and compilation to current gen may not be the most effective. Over a selection of missions to vary the runs and aligning them both as best I can, we can see the PS5 wins one level by 1%, and on the snow mission the Series S wins by 2.6%, meaning we are well within margin of error territory here. Using the wall mission as a tiebreaker, another stressful point, we do see that the Series X can take some small wins in heavy sections, but then so can the PlayStation 5 in others. But overall throughout the mission it's less than 1% between them, meaning we have an almost perfect match, which is invisible outside of the FPS test here.
50%. AP at 30%.
One will take care of the city. You take care of the mouse tetrapod MT-621.
Number one. AP at 30%.
Raven. One of the infamous handler Walter's hounds. Interesting. Confirmed. Juggernaut destroyed. Operation Wall Climber is a success.
Not all hope is lost though. Aside PC power and scaling to get a locked 60 FPS, there is one other option available to both of these consoles, but one is far easier to access than the other. Step forward, the continued unsung hero, not by me at least, of these consoles, backwards compatibility. With PlayStation's BC method really highlighting its strengths here, as I mentioned at the time, and Xbox has actually gotten worse. The first thing is the performance. Well, as you've seen here, the Series X in its forced BC mode is marginally better than the Xbox One X, largely due to the fact it now seems to lock the resolution to 4K rather than scale it, whereas the Xbox One X is often 1512p. So the extra GPU power here is being spent on more pixels at a lower frequency. As such, the BC mode here is largely worse than the current mode it actually offers. Compounding this though is, for me to get this to work, I had to force the Series X offline and use my disk copy. You could then still copy your install from the Xbox One X or Xbox One and do this also, but you would need to be set to the primary console, etc, online digital games, and then you need the old console to download it, as you can't download the old versions on Series X and Series S anymore, so effectively locking all digital players out of that choice, and that's not good, and I think it is a shame and reinforces why I do not like an all digital future. These are the kind of issues and far more that we'll see far more often. It's far from a major problem, but certainly one that negates the good work that the team did with BC at the midpoint of last generation. The PS5 is far simpler and much better. You can simply take the PS4 disc, use that from the Pro mode, or just choose to download the PS4 version on your PS5, which you can then do in any game that supports cross-gen versions, or if you own that PlayStation 4 version directly, digitally. If you own it on a disc, you just stick it in, so long as you have a disc-based PS5. Once done, you can play online and offline, turn updates on or off, something you cannot do on the Xbox. As soon as you go online, it will force you to update the Series X and Series S version, but the PlayStation 5 you can choose to just play without that and carry on going. That out of the way, we can see that the stress points on PlayStation 5, where we could see the high 30s, albeit briefly in these heavy sections, are now practically a locked 60 FPS, aside a handful of dropped frames. The backwards compatibility here, using the Pro version effectively at that 1800p checkerboard, is a locked 60 FPS in every section I tested. Nothing you'd pick up without a frame rate analysis like this. So overall, if you don't like the performance hiccups and judders that can happen in the performance mode on both Series X and PlayStation 5, then only the PlayStation 5's backwards compatibility mode gives you the choice, as we covered in Elden Ring before, to move into that last generation version and get a fully locked 60 FPS. And with From Software titles, the visual impact, although noted and visible at times, doesn't make that much of an impact, but the performance boost can certainly be noticed. And again, it would be good to have these options forced into the game without having to use a backwards compatibility version, but I understand that the complexities and work around that. But overall, the PlayStation 5 is the best way to play this title because you get access to the PS4 version, and that gives you access to a fully locked 60 FPS. I've been a fan of FromSoft since they started the Kingfield series in '96, in Europe at least, on the PlayStation. And as a fan of RPG titles in Dungeon Master, Ultimate and more, it pulled me in. But Armored Core in '97 was the one that hooked me, and I think reflected how varied their style was. Over the years they have grown, and Demon's Souls, Dark Souls and Bloodborne have all been an evolution on a theme. In AC6, I think they've perfected the modern day shoot 'em up in 3D they were aiming for in 1997. The accessibility and simplicity of playing in chunks when you no longer have time to throw away all the willpower for hours on end, this grabs me even more than those titles. It balances the challenge perfectly and gets progressively harder but never feels unfair. The tactics and timing are as vital as the skills it asks of you, and it has been my most returned to game this year when I've had spare time to kill, even if it's just 30 minutes. The audio quality is exceptional with a superb sound mix and slightly 80s action movie hammy dialogue, but it all works. Music is not overpowering but balances great synth tunes and deep analog beats in many levels that complete that 80s futuristic tone it is aiming for. Visually, it's not a stunner, but artistically strong, as all From Software titles are. They really know how to create atmosphere and impact and style without using expensive technology. Loading is another boost in the current generation and even PC formats, significantly faster than the last gen, but even then, it's never a title that makes you wait hours on end, unlike Bloodborne. The fact the game runs well on such a range of hardware is a highlight, even if it never gets close to a perfect performing rate aside your own PC spec and settings, or like Elden Ring before it, the PS5 BC mode of the Pro, which is nigh on perfect. Showing that the possibility is present for all current generation owners, yes, even the Series S, to have a locked 60 FPS mode with cutbacks, even if it is simply the BC mode as a native option within the game. Now, From will never go back and add this as a choice, and as such, only the excellent and open BC modes available on the PS5 provide PlayStation owners that choice to get the best performing mode on console. That said, the quality and frame rate modes are welcome and do come close, almost better than every other prior release on consoles, to being a locked 60 FPS game. The PC version is also a revelation in comparison to Dark Souls and others. DLSS or FSR2 choices would be welcome, alongside maybe a bigger choice in the menus, but that would be more work for the engine team and would likely not make much of an impact on the audience or sales. I do hope this game appears in more lists of the best games of 2023, as for me, I rate it higher than Elden Ring last year, which I loved. But my son loved it far more. But as you can see from my title in this video, this is one of my best games of 2023 already, and you only have a few months left to find out which ones will be joining it. Armored Core 6 is a flaming scorcher for me. And that's it for the deep dive into every format possible on this excellent game. I know I've been away from my channel for a while, for apologies on that delay. It's been very busy. There's other issues in terms of work and family and my day job and everything else. I'm going to get back to a regular cadence of videos, so this starts here and some more tomorrow and going forward. There'll be more exclusive content for my Patreon subscribers and also more early access stuff coming on there, along with all my work over on IGN. Anyway, that's it. I'm out. But if you like this or anything else that I do, then please like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And be sure to keep an eye on all the things coming up on NX Gamer and beyond very, very soon. I'll catch you on the next one.
Hope your luck changes.
That's it, man. It's game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now?